Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the urinary system. So right now we're in the nephrons, looking at that functional unit of the kidneys doing the filtering of the blood. And we saw how under high pressure, solutes and water from the blood got forced into the tube system. And we need to reabsorb or bring in 99+% of what we filtered out. So reabsorption is moving water and solutes from the tube back into the blood. So let's draw that, and Snuggles is making this really easy on me. Water and solutes from tube back into the blood. And then secretion is the opposite. So we're going to take wastes that are in the blood that we want to get rid of and push them from the blood into the tube to be excreted. Don't worry if you're here from the last video, Fisher is still right there, staring at me as I make this, so I don't feel alone. I'm so lucky. Okay, and then our last one is excretion. So that's just, by the end, we've got urine, it's going to be excreted. Pushing wastes out of the body as urine. Great. Okay, so now let's look a little bit more at the nephron and the parts that do these functions. Okay, so the first part of the nephron where we're doing filtration, this whole part here, is called the renal corpuscle. Corpse, the body, where the main filtering is going on. Okay? And so there are two parts here. That blood vessel is called the glomerulus. That's where it's under high pressure, water and solutes are pushed out. It's a capillary. And it's also got fenestrations or holes, pores. Pores. Okay, so there's little holes all over on the capillary, which are hard to see in this picture because there are these cells on the outside. Those cells are called podocytes, or feet cells. And so basically they can cover up some of the holes or move so the holes are open, so they can help determine the glomerular filtration rate, or how fast we're making filtrate. The higher your blood pressure, the higher the pressure here. So it's its own balancing act until you get too far off. So if your blood pressure is a bit high, the pressure here will be higher. You'll make more filtrate, and you'll make more urine. If your blood pressure is low, oppositely, you'll send out less filtrate, you'll make less urine, you'll keep more fluid, and that'll help bring it back up. If it gets too far out, though, hormones will help determine how we control the blood pressure too. And so then outside of the glomerulus, you've got this like cup, the glomerular capsule, that helps catch the filtrate, and it's going to send it into the next part, the tube system. Catches, like catch, filtrate. Okay. So filtration occurs here, and then reabsorption and secretion are going to occur in the renal tubule. So it's this whole tube system here. Orange probably not the best color for that. Let's get some more contrast, right? Oop. Okay, so this whole tube system, where as that filtrate moves through, we reabsorb water, solutes, everything we want to keep, and then we secrete wastes. And there are three sections. The proximal convoluted tubule. So let's do that. Ooh, let's highlight it. Don't get too excited in bright green. So if you tell a convoluted story, it has all these twists and turns. It's not very straightforward. So the first part of the tube that turns is the proximal convoluted tubule, or PCT. And remember, proximal means closer to the body trunk, like the elbow is proximal, the shoulder is proximal compared to the elbow would be distal, it's farther. So the distal convoluted tubule, let's do a different color, is the convoluted portion more towards the end. That kind of also looks green on the yellow. Huh. And so then one portion of it goes down from the cortex actually to the medulla, the middle of the pyramid of the nephron that we didn't talk about. And that's the nephron loop. So the nephron loop is pretty cool because the longer the loop, the more concentrated urine you make. So like the adorable little kangaroo rat has really long loops, so it has really concentrated urine, so that it loses less water. And that's how it can live in the southwest, the desert. That makes sense? And then after we get through the tube system, it's going to go into collecting ducts that will then lead down to that renal pelvis to the ureter, bladder, urethra out. Okay? So then we've got urine. We might save some water. This is where hormones are going to determine if we reabsorb more water or not, more salts or not. But at this point, it's urine. Those wastes are going to get excreted. And so this table shows you how much you filter every day and what percent is reabsorbed. And so you'll notice things that we want to keep, like glucose. You don't want to waste glucose, right? So you're going to reabsorb 100%. That means that if there's urine with glucose in it, that something's going on. Most likely something like diabetes, where your glucose levels are so high that they didn't have time to reabsorb it all. Whereas like wastes, we want to get rid of all of it. We don't want to reabsorb any of it. And this is a cool view of that tubule. So here are the cells lining it, and then you've got the microvilli, just like in the small intestine. Woo! You're going to have too much fun with a highlighter. Who knew? What do you think microvilli does? It increases surface area. Same exact idea as in the small intestine, right? We reabsorb more with increased surface area. We absorb more with more surface area in the small intestine. And then you can see right outside the tube, you're going to have capillaries to pick up anything that comes out of the tube. And then to secrete through any waste you want to get rid of. Lovely. So that's how the nephron functions. Now let's look a little bit more at pH. So pH, as I'm sure you remember, is a measure of hydrogen. Right? Acidic is a low pH, high hydrogen levels, right? Whereas bases are high numbers and they have less hydrogen, more OH minus. Right? Okay. So we want to have normal pHs, right? We need to maintain homeostasis, because if it gets too far off, we're going to start to have our proteins unfold and denature and not work anymore. They work best at a specific pH. Our blood's pH is 7.35 to 4.5, so a little bit acidic. Blood. 7.35 to 0.45. Okay. So if we start getting too basic, we want to get rid of bicarbonate. We want to reabsorb more hydrogen. If we get too acidic, we want to get rid of hydrogen and keep bicarbonate. And this is showing how bicarbonate is a base. So let's highlight let's do a nice lavender. So bicarbonate, this is bicarbonate right here. Right? So it can grab onto this hydrogen and become carbonic acid. So it can take H plus out of water. So that makes it a base. Right? So if we get rid of that base, our blood becomes more acidic, the pH goes down. If we get rid of hydrogen, we're going to in our pH. Right? So if we return bicarbonate, we'll increase our pH. It'll be more basic again. And if we remove excess hydrogen, that also makes us more basic. Yes, does that make sense? You want me to say it again? I feel like I should say it again. Okay, so how it's written here, we can return bicarbonate to the blood. So keeping more base makes us more basic. And if we remove excess hydrogen during secretion, that also brings us up. So doing the opposite would bring them back down. I think that's better. Is that better? Email if you have questions. Zoom meeting me. Okay. And then this is showing the cool view of what's going on. So we've got our glomerulus here and the glomerular capsule of the renal corpuscle. And then we've got our tube system, right? Proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted tubule, and then the nephron loop. Right. So the first thing that happens is filtration. And then most of that we return to the blood. So that's going to be reabsorption. And then wastes are going to get pushed from the blood into the tube, and that's going to be secretion. And then it'll go as urine into the rest of the kidney. And then ureter, bladder, urethra. Urethra! Okay. So other interesting kidney functions, they make EPO, or erythropoietin. So that tells the red bone marrow to make more red blood cells. So anytime the kidneys detect low oxygen levels, so whether you're at a high altitude and you're not getting enough oxygen in, or you have emphysema or some sort of COPD, or you're just becoming anemic because you don't have enough red blood cells, they're going to secrete EPO, make more red blood cells, increase your blood's oxygen carrying capacity. Right? And that's what they use in blood doping, because you can't tell that there's anything different in there. The other thing that they do is transform vitamin D into its active form, calcitrol, and so that you can absorb calcium from your diet. Lovely. Not so lovely. Renal failure. So renal failure is when you start not being able to make enough filtrate quickly enough. So your glomerular filtration rate will drop and get down to basically less than 15% of what they normally do. And it can be acute or chronic. Chronic is where you might have to have a kidney transplant. Right? So consequences, we can have acidosis because we're not doing what we said before with the bicarbonate and hydrogen. We can have anemia, right? We're not making enough new red blood cells. We're not releasing EPO. Edema, swelling, we're not getting rid of enough water. High blood pressure, same thing. And then you'll have those wastes build up in your blood. It's really not fun. I had a friend who went through renal failure. He was very tired all the time, very pale, couldn't really do the normal things. So one thing that he had to do was dialysis. So that's where a machine filters your blood for you. And you can see this woman having blood flow in, get cleaned, and go back. The other thing that can happen is a kidney transplant. So there it has to be someone genetically compatible who gives you a kidney. It's hard on both people, especially the one who gives the kidney. But you can see here in this picture of this Meising guy, where you've got your two kidneys. The one on the right is slightly lower because the liver takes up more space there. And then the donor kidney comes in here, just in the iliac crest of your ileum. Okay, next video.